and how hard is it sometimes to change the mindset that the individuals bring? Be that mindset that winning is the important thing, which I know wouldn't be your philosophy, or just pushing youth athletes in a certain direction that may not be beneficial for the long term, or even I would say very few consider what they do to create a Spartan mindset, whatever way you frame that. And where you do see some very good. I remember there was a very famous GAA coach called Mick O'Dwyer, and he was around in the kind of late 1970s, 80s, and was very successful. But I remember him speaking about the influence he had on his players outside of GAA and outside of football. And it was about shaping their personalities and helping them with their careers, or helping them with interpersonal issues that they had. So there was very much a 360 element to what he did. And I always got a sense that great coaches do that. They do leave their imprint. But how difficult is that to get across? How difficult is it to teach that to other people?
So my two most difficult people to work with as coaches are the volunteer's parent that was voluntold, the one in the back of the room said, I'll coach my kid's team. Because they come in, they want to do well for their kid. But like you said, they come in with preconceptions and notions, and they come in very naive. So they don't know what they don't know. And sometimes not knowing what you don't know can be damaging, because you do things because that's what your coach did, or that's how you were raised, or and you don't realize that you're taking a step back as a coach and following some of these archaic habits that we're switching. The other group that was always the most difficult were the grizzled veterans who'd come up through coaching, and they didn't have any kind of professional learning. They had to learn on their own. I learned on the streets. I learned in the trenches type of mentality. And so you'd walk into a room of coaches to do a workshop, and they're the one in the back with the feet up on the table and the arms crossed. I'm not going to learn anything from this young guy. I sweat more than him. Those two groups were difficult, but they were my two favorite, because with the one that didn't know what they didn't know, they were eager to learn. They were sponges, and they wanted to absorb, and they asked a lot of questions that would come off as quote unquote stupid to a veteran, but to a coaching educator was like, that's a really good question. Nobody's asked that before. Let's explore this. And so when the light bulb went off with them, they were all in. They were disciples of that style of coaching. If they learned from a wooden, then they were wood knights for the rest of life. The other ones that were so difficult to get to, the grizzled veterans, it was getting them to see that I wasn't telling them that I was better than them, or that they were doing it wrong. That we were going to work together to find the best way to make them be the best coach they could be. And it was obviously a lot more difficult conversation, but as I'd start sharing stories and philosophy, wrapping my philosophy and my values in these stories, that's when you see the light bulb go off, because the stories created a connection. There was empathy. There went, oh, I didn't realize, even though he's young looking, he'd been coaching since he was 16. I didn't realize he had 2 masters, and I didn't realize he'd done X or done B and tried X or tried Y. And so when I started telling the stories, or most importantly, when I told my vulnerable stories, when I made stupid mistakes as a coach and caused emotional harm to a kid because I yelled at him, or I didn't play him enough and it really hurt his feelings, and I didn't understand how callous I was, and telling him I'll get you in when I can get you in type of, when I would share those vulnerable stories and say I grew from that, and when I grew, this is what happened, that's when they would connect with me. That's when these coaches would say, hey, you know what, I might be able to steal something from this guy and it'll make me look better. And what would happen is they would actually evolve their game so much that I'm going, tell me more. These veteran coaches had so much to teach me that once they were bought in and saying, okay, let's talk more about your style, Reed. What do you do in this situation? And what if you have a parent that's this? And as I'd answer their questions, I'd say, well, let me ask you a little bit more about your sport. Let me ask you more about how you came up to be. And I'd get information from them and then carry it to the next group. And it's also one of the reasons why I love working with multiple sports. The GAA was so fascinating to me because it was such a foreign sport. But then to see the similarities, like it didn't matter what sport it was, there was a lot of similarities in how we coached and the mental performance of athletes. And so I loved learning those new sports, because then I could turn around and apply it to the next group. Like, well, I was talking to GAA last week and they were saying this. Maybe we can use that in lacrosse.
Yeah, exactly.